Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Bonjour, Kendra Loudon and Desnica, St. Louis, Oklahoma, Nadojbia. I am Kendra Loudon. I'm the foster care manager here at Citizen Potawatomi Nation, and we're so glad that you're here with us today. So this presentation is an overview of FireLodge Children and Family Services. So you're going to get to hear a little bit about each program, but we did place a special emphasis on the foster care and adoption program. So if that's something you're interested in or want to know more about, then today is a great day for that overview. If you have questions, please throw them in the chat. Or if you would like to unmute yourself, that's fine. Ashley, will be watching the chat and we'll read those questions at the end. But if you have a question during, I just will be on presentation mode, so I can't see your chat. So please just feel free to unmute. Just a few housekeeping things. We definitely are having some weather today. So Potawatomis, we say Jigwek Bamosewat, which means the thunders are walking, and they sure have been. So if there's any streaming issues, I apologize. It may be your home, it may be our office, sometimes it could be both. So if for any reason you miss information, then you can contact me afterwards. Just call. We'll have our phone numbers and stuff at the end, but if you for some reason miss that, just call the main number here at the tribe and ask for Kendra Loudon, and we can make sure and chat. But okay, so I'd like to introduce Ashley May. She is the Director of FireLodge Children and Family Services, and she is going to get us started and give an overview of what our program is. And I will pull up the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Kendra said, my name is Ashley May, and I recently became Director of FireLodge Children and Family Services almost a year ago, but I have worked for the nation for 7 years. I actually began working for the nation many years ago at the grocery store, and then through college and internships, I am now in ICW, but I spent 6 years in with our domestic violence program. Umbrellaed under FireLodge Children and Family Services are 4 different departments. We have Adult Protective Services, Family Preservation, Indian Child Welfare, and the Foster Care and Adoption Program. So a little overview of Adult Protective Services. The director of that program is Janet Draper, and she does have one case manager, Brian Moore. So APS provides vulnerable Potawatomi adults with protection from abuse, neglect, or exploitation and offers them services. So they work very closely with our tribal elders. They're constantly at Father Murphy, which is elder housing, and they also pretty much go anywhere that there is a need to check on elders. Family members living out of state may be concerned. So if just at the bottom, if you feel that a vulnerable adult needs emergency response and health and safety risk, please call 911 immediately. So family preservation, this is a really amazing program that we have. Our coordinator is actually on this Zoom today too, Darian Young. So this program, basic goal is to preserve the Native family. So this program actually serves any family that is a member of the federally recognized tribe. So we work with Potawatomi families, and we work with other people who are involved with other members of other Native American tribes. So that program, Darian really goes in and she's able to assess the family. She's able to help them correct those conditions in which child welfare is involved in some way. So she has parenting classes, budgeting classes, family support, case management, and she refers to other community resources and does provide some in-home services for the families. And there is her picture. That is Darian. So Indian Child Welfare. Our Indian Child Welfare Program provides child protective and permanency planning services for families of Potawatomi children. Child Protective Services offers intervention to protect children and provide services to help the families with any difficulties causing the safety of their children to be at risk. We make every attempt to preserve the family, but there are those circumstances where the children are just unsafe in the home and we do have to intervene with that family. So here's some pictures of our staff. Whitney Coots is one of our case managers. Ashley Durham is our administrative assistant and intake specialist. And Tracy Humphrey is also another one of our ICW case managers. So who do we serve? We are dedicated to serving every child welfare case involving citizen Potawatomi Nation families. So I know I talked a little bit, family preservation is open to families who are members of any federally recognized tribe, but specifically Indian child welfare. We only legally intervene on cases involving our Potawatomi children. We actually get involved in our cases nationwide. So all over the United States, we are involved in our cases. You know, I always say from New York to California. So we kind of have a caseload that is considered out of state, and then of course in state with Oklahoma, and then our own tribal cases. So kind of just a timeline to kind of show you how, you know, ICW becomes involved with the family is it always starts with that referral. So someone in the child's life is concerned for the safety of the child, and so they report that to either CPN, ICW, or DHS. We do our own child welfare investigations in our tribal housing, anything that is on trust land. We do the investigation solely if DHS is the first to respond. Once they find out a child is Potawatomi, they will let us know. And primarily, we do sometimes find out early enough that we can actually respond with the state workers to the home as well. So an investigation occurs. So we assess the family to ensure their safety. Prevention. So we always try to offer prevention services as much as we can. We want children to remain with their family. So if the case is eligible for prevention, then we will get Darian in that home and start working some of those services. And then out of home. So we, you know, in those cases that we are not eligible to have prevention in the home, then, you know, the child will be placed in a different home. And so we can continue to help the family. So placement options. Foster care will assess available relatives for placement approval. We always look to place children with their families first. You know, the states have to follow the Indian Child Welfare Act. That's a federal law. But once the case is with the tribe, we don't follow ICWA, although our own tribal code, you know, is very similar to it, but different. So we always look for any available relatives first. If there are none that are available, then we actually do have licensed foster homes that Kendra will talk to you a little bit about later. And I know there's a lot of talk out there, but regarding child welfare involvement, but I can assure you that nearly all child welfare cases have a goal of reunification. Our goal is always to keep the child in the home, and you know, in those instances where they have to go out of home home placement, then we always do what we can to help the families correct those conditions so that the child can return to their own home. A service plan is then put in place, common names, individualized service plan, ISP, if you've ever heard those terms. So the parents will then agree to complete certain services designed to ensure the safety and promote reunification. So those are designed specifically to what led the child to be removed. So I know, you know, not all of our ISPs have parenting classes, not all of them have domestic violence services. It's really individualized to the situation that they are in. So possible case outcomes. So again, reunification is always our goal. And so that is when the children are returned back to the home of the parents. Guardianship, so a legal guardian gains custody through the court, and guardianships can happen in state or tribal court. Adoption, so the placement, hopefully a relative will adopt the child if reunification cannot happen. And other children may elect to not be adopted or be matched with an adoptive placement and age out. So we see that commonly with our older children in care, usually the 16, 17-year-olds, they don't want to be adopted by another family member. And so if they age out, which turn 18 while they're still in care, then we do provide them IL services, which is independent living services. So we just assure those children that there's a safety net and that we can provide certain services even though they are 18. So next is the foster care and adoption program, and I will let Kendra take it from here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ashley. So if you guys have questions about how Indian child welfare works, about cases, things like that, feel free to throw them in the chat or save them for a time when we have a conversation later. It's up to you. So the foster care and adoption program, it's pretty simple. My job is to work with families that are fostering and adopting. So I actually handle all the adoption paperwork for children, and then I do the assessment process, which we'll talk a little bit more in depth about. So that is basically assessing homes to approve them for fostering and adoption. So we constantly need homes. And we may, I've actually approved a lot of homes in this last year, but nearly all of them have placement now. So actually just approved a new home today, and we already have a child in mind to potentially place in their home. So we definitely have a great need for openings for Potawatomi children. So foster and adoptive parents, what their role is to guide and support children in their greatest time of need and helping them with facing and handling their trauma. Every child that has been placed into foster care, whether they're a newborn placed into care from the hospital or an older child has experienced trauma, just the process of being removed or not being able to go to your family home is traumatic for children. So what does a foster parent do? They provide daily care, love, and emotional support. So just like you would do for your own children, you would do for a foster child. Some people say treat like your own children. I'm like, well, if you, spank your children or do some other things that aren't necessarily approved in our policies, I would say more like love them like your own. And so during the process of approval, then we go over all of the rules. And really, it's nothing like too overboard. It's also that it's pretty easy to follow. A foster parent keeps the child engaged in normal activities, so you are able to put them in softball, baseball, cheerleading, percussion lessons, clarinet lessons, whatever you would put another child in, maybe your biological child or a relative, you can do with a foster child. Also, a foster parent, it's really important for them to promote a relationship with the child's birth family. So there are many times when parents are actively working to get their children placed back in their home, and that makes it really easy. But there's also times that parents are struggling, particularly if they have substance use issues that they are maybe just addressing for the first time with their first child welfare program contact. So your role is not just a caretaker to the child, but you're also a mentor and a support to the biological family. And although not every case allows for that type of contact, it is encouraged, and we ask for our foster parents to be open to that. Also, we want to make sure that Potawatomi children have access to their heritage. There are a lot of great resources that Citizen Potawatomi Nation has. We do have a cultural heritage center with a museum and a gift shop. Obviously, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, some of the in-person classes, cultural classes there have not been happening, but there are a lot of online resources. There's even YouTube videos you can watch. And so those are things that I share with families once they're looking for that. Also the festival every year. So if you're not Potawatomi, the Citizen Potawatomi Nation has a yearly festival for tribal members, and that wasn't able to take place this year, but we did transition to it virtually. And so they threw it together really quickly and did an amazing job for the time that they had. So hopefully next year we can meet in person, but if it's not deemed to be safe, then, we will make sure and we share all that information with our families on what resources there are. So why do we need Native American foster homes? Well, Ashley had briefly touched on the Indian Child Welfare Act. So it was a law passed in 1978 by the United States Congress, and it sets guidelines for placement of Indian children. It also sets guidelines for how state child welfare agencies should work with Native families and work with tribes. So we'll just kind of talk a little bit about placement preferences. So whenever a child is placed into foster care, there's an order of preference. And just to kind of summarize, it's a little more in depth, but it would be with a relative, a member of the child's tribe, or a member of another Native American tribe. And then the same goes for adoption. And the CPN tribal code is similar, but it does vary a little bit. So we don't have to go too deep into that today. But the main thing to know is number one is relatives, And unfortunately, there are a lot of times when a relative is not available. They maybe their career or their space in their home, or maybe even something like in their background check that we ran just doesn't allow them to be approved to be a foster parent. Then we look at next is our approved Potawatomi foster home. So we have foster homes that are, and we'll talk about this, but you can be any tribe. But so we look through, it doesn't matter what tribe our homes are, we look through, and then if there's not a relative, try to place with them. So then another big need is homes that will take sibling sets and older children. And so there's always homes willing to take like babies, like who doesn't love a baby? Or even children up to 5. Most people say 0 to 2, 0 to 3, or 0 to 5 for their placement preferences. And of course, I respect that because sometimes people have chosen that age range because daycare is a better option for them, because maybe if they got a school age child, they live like in a different town from where the child will go to school. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons that people choose a younger age range, but sometimes it's just fear or fear of the unknown and not knowing, you know, how would I take care of a child that, you know, they're already older, they already have a trauma history, they have a personality, they have a life already. But that's what, you know, like where we come in is to help you know how to take care of them. So again, we need Potawatomi children to have their cultural needs supported by foster parents. We do send out a cultural box every time a Potawatomi child is placed into care. We will mail a cultural box to their foster parent, and wherever they're placed, and that is across the nation. And it does include a lot of great things like language resources and games. There's coloring sheets, there's Potawatomi history, there's just a lot. But one thing we love to put in there is the story of how Rabbit's tail got short. And we send a stuffed animal bunny to every child. So we've gotten a lot of good feedback about that, and we're happy to do that. So who can be a foster parent? You do have to live in Oklahoma. The reason for this is the bulk of our cases that are in a concentrated area are in Oklahoma. So we have, I think, around 50 children or so. We just had Jigway Bamosewat, Thunders are walking. I don't know if you guys heard that. We have a lot of cases out of state too, but they are spread out across the nation. I mean, just like in nearly every state. And so during the approval process, I do have to do several visits to the home. When we place a child in a home, we have to do a monthly visit. So it's just not feasible at this point for most tribes really to approve homes out of state. You can be single or married. That's a misconception. I have worked in Indian child welfare, in foster care and adoption for 8 years. I have worked with many single foster parents, and they have just been wonderful. It's, you know, the key is if you have a good support system, you can really do anything. So you do not have to be married. You do have to be a member of a federally recognized tribe, and the reason for that is because the Indian Child Welfare Act does set guidelines for if the child's not with a relative. Like I said, they have to be with a Native American. You do have to be 21 years of age and be financially stable. You don't have to make a certain type of income or have a certain type of job. We just want to make sure that you're able to meet your own financial needs before we place additional children with you. So you also have to pass criminal and child welfare background checks. So you don't have to have necessarily a clean history, but we do want to see that there's nothing concerning that would cause harm to a child. There are times when someone 20, 30 years ago made a mistake and got arrested, or maybe was charged with a crime. And if it's not a violent crime, then we're able to look at everything on a case-by-case basis. If it involves drug or alcohol, again, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. But I don't want anyone to think that they shouldn't apply, or at least call and have a conversation, because I can tell you on the phone if you let me know, you know, what your background is in the criminal history, or maybe a DHS investigation that happened in the past, then we can talk through it. And once I get in those results, then I can fully assess it and work with you. So just know that just because maybe one thing happened in your past, you shouldn't not apply. So how do we apply? First thing to do is reach out. So you can call me or email me, and my email is going to be at the end. But I typically love to set up a phone call to go over and answer all of your questions. So today is a really good overview of the process, but there's a lot more details that I'm not going over today that I think would, they kind of vary by family. So if you would like to set up a time to have a phone call, I would love to do that. So then I will send you the paperwork, and so I can mail it or email it. And if I email it, I still go ahead and mail you a little folder with some, I'll show you on the next screen. So I'll mail you a folder with a CPN seal sticker and then some brochures that are great and informational. And then if you want the whole thing in paper, we'll just send it just like this. So when you submit it back, one awesome thing is you don't have to mail it. So if you're like a computer person that was just like to scan and email things, then I don't have to have the originals, and that is perfectly fine. And so if you, once you turn in your, we assess your background check results and see that everything's good. We look at your finances, we review your application, and if you meet the criteria to move forward, then we would start the home study process. So what is a home study? If you haven't heard of this, it is a written assessment regarding the ability and fitness of an applicant to foster and adopt. So it educates you and prepares you for caring for abused and neglected children. So as I'm asking you questions and learning about you and your family, I can kind of gauge like kind of where you're at in that and see if you've had any experience helping children, or maybe something in your own life, you've had a personal experience with abuse and neglect, then I could help guide you through that process. It also evaluates if you are capable and suitable to take in children. So some people may, have the financial stability checked, and they have the criminal and child welfare history checked. Like there's nothing there, we're good. But maybe emotionally, there are some struggles right now that might not be the best fit for foster children. That can happen. Like we try to work with everyone the best we can, but we have to make sure that homes aren't just physically, financially stable, but also that it's an emotionally stable home for a child. So it does also help me get information that matches children with you and matches you to children. That's really the way I like to look at it. So if there's a certain age range that you've shared and you have a certain reason, then I just remember that and we have it documented. And that's kind of like how I work and know. Because if you said, you did not want children under 5, you only wanted school age, then that's what we look at for you. But also just know that any placement preferences you put on can limit yourself. So just be as open as you can while also doing the best thing for your family. So the home study really is the lengthiest part of this process. So the paperwork you send in, I process everything the day I get it in. For the DHS child welfare history, it takes about 2 weeks to get back. But sometimes we go ahead and just try to move forward as quickly as we can. So the home study is, so how we do it is basically by our own guidelines, but we do have to meet certain federal standards. So if you've ever had a home study completed before, it might be a little more in depth than like a private home study or another agency, or maybe it will be less in depth. It just really depends on the agency you're trying to work with. So I'm completing typically 3 home visits. And during those visits, I'm interviewing you, assessing you. I'm normally there about 2 to 2.5 hours each visit. So I'm there a long time, but that's our time to talk. It's your time to ask questions. I am there on your time. So I'm in no hurry to ever leave. If we are having good conversation and learning things, then that is great. So I'll talk with you about why you want to be a foster parent. We'll go over your family background, your relationship with your relatives, kind of like what is your daily life like, what are your parenting practices and beliefs, and that all ties to talking about discipline. Also, I assess the safety of your home physically. So I do an actual walkthrough and then make sure, like, do you have expired extinguisher or smoke alarms where you need to? And we actually have all that stuff on hand. So when I come out, I can actually bring those things if you're missing anything that we would require. So just know that as long as your home is, pretty clean, doesn't have to be perfect by any means. We know people live in their homes. If your home is clean and safe for a child, and that's all you're going to really need to provide. And then if there are any issues for like physical safety of the home, then we work together to fix those issues. So also talk about your spiritual beliefs and religion. You don't have to have a certain spiritual belief to work with the Citizen Potawatomi Nation or a certain religion. So just know that we ask that because we would like to make sure, do you have any beliefs that might impact a child if they are placed in their home? So I've worked with a home at my last job that was Jehovah's Witness. They did not believe in blood transfusions. And so we talked about it, and they said they were more than supportive if a foster child had to have one, but for their own children, they just didn't have that belief. And so that was like, okay, we, came to an agreement there. Like they understand that the child is in custody of the tribe or state, then, those type of decisions aren't going to be up to them if it's medically necessary. Also talk about your health history. So, and this is just to make sure that you are currently physically healthy. You will get a medical examination done during the process from your doctor. And then I just compare that with what you tell me and make sure that you are emotionally and physically stable. It also is an assessment of your capability to provide trauma-informed care. So I'm looking to see, like, are you feeling prepared? Do you feel like you can handle this? And then also I want to know about your willingness to bridge or support a relationship between a child and their parent. So what happens after approval? Well, that's when it's time to accept children into your home. So if I am in constant communication, so Whitney and Tracy, as we showed the pictures earlier, are 2 caseworkers, and then Janet and Ashley also have some cases as well. So I'm just in communication with them at all times, and I'm like probably pestering them, but I'm like, hey, did we get an update? Hey, did we have court yet? To kind of see where we're at, because sometimes we're waiting on a paternity test to be involved in a case where we know we have placement for a child, but we need to make sure they're Potawatomi, or maybe there's just like a pending court hearing. So once they let me know, hey, we have a 3 and 4-year-old sibling set that are in need of a home, then I get all the information from them: their gender, their age, their names, their any history of trauma, their reason for removal, the things that they like, what are their good behaviors, what are some struggles they have. So it's just so that I get as much as I can so that you're prepared to be able to, give me an answer. So the case manager, which is Tracy and Whitney, like I talked about, they're the main 2. They are assigned to the child, and they are the ones that actually come to your home monthly, and then they make recommendations to the court. So my role is that I offer, I work with you during the approval process, and then afterwards I offer you post-approval and post-placement support. So I will connect you to services, resources, and I do send out a newsletter every month, and it's not like a Word document newsletter. It's like an email where you can click on links, and there's usually different Potawatomi events, cultural resources, and then development and trauma resources. So we love to send that out, and hopefully, you could find that useful. So as far as like once you get a child placed in your home, again, so Tracy or Whitney, the case manager, would be the person, like your main contact as far as the child. But again, I'm always there for you. I help with a lot of issues like daycare and childcare and things like that. So I'm in constant communication, texting foster parents daily. So when my phone drowned this morning, I had to send an email to everyone to let them know, because I'm sure at least a couple may have reached out to me today. All right, so hopefully I'll have a new phone by the end of today. So we would love for you to connect with us on Facebook. If you just type in @CPN FireLodge, that's an easy way to find us. But you could also just search FireLodge Children and Family Services. The more likes we have and the more shares we have, the more that we can spread our message. So my email is here, and Ashley's email is here. And if you have questions in general about the program, Ashley's great. If it's specifically about foster care or general questions, I can answer those as well. So did we have any questions in the chat?
We did not have any questions in the chat. Brady just said that they loved the culture box idea.
Oh, great. Yeah, we really like, and basically I would say it's ever developing, because if I get 5 free minutes, actually do not think of a new project or something to do.
Yes.
So also another thing, exciting thing, is whenever you get approved as a foster home, you get a certificate of approval, and it's like a cute little certificate. But also we will send you kind of like if you've ever had a FabFit Fun Box, I call it our version of that, like a FireLodge Fit Fun Box. But we'll give you a couple of our nice items, like we have camp mugs and aluminum water bottles and car sunshades. So we just like want to kind of shower you with our appreciation too with some of the items that we have. I know one thing we didn't really talk about, like I said, this is an overview, but once you have a child placed with you, we also have been able to use our funding to provide you with the crib, the beds they need, car seat, formula, diapers. Like we do like a whole welcome pack. I mean, it's a lot, and it will save you not just money, but from time. It'll save you a lot of time from having to go to Walmart and buy all this stuff last minute. So we have placed children all across the state and still been able to help, not just homes in Shawnee. We just had a home that lives in like the Lawton area, and I was actually quarantined. I would have delivered the stuff, but I wasn't able to. So they were able to come to the office on their way to go pick up the child, and they loaded up everything. And we gave them the crib, a pack and play with a bassinet, plenty of formula, and all of that. Foster parents also get WIC. So for children under 5, they will have formula and cereal and milk and all of that. So daycare is paid for. So that's kind of amazing, something a lot of people don't know about. You do have to be working. So if you're a stay-at-home parent, it wouldn't necessarily be approved. You could send them to daycare, but you would need to private pay. But if you're working, even working from home, then daycare can be paid for as well. So my role is I'm going to connect you to all these resources with, the free cribs for the children, the car seats, the daycare, like all of that is just like, that's my realm. That's what I do.
Kendra, Clarissa also asked, I like the cultural box too. How did you come up with the materials for the box?
So we actually literally just talked to the museum or our heritage center and asked them what they had. We were able to, like kind of what we were thinking about was during our annual festival every year, the tribe gives out backpacks with different, there's lots of things. Sometimes there's like pens and notepads and fans, but also there will be like language material, coloring books. And so we just reached out, and then like we've just built upon it from there. We decided that we wanted to put a cultural story. And so a traditional Anishinaabe story of how rabbit's tail got short, or Wabozo, we included that too. We're just trying to think about what are more ways that the children can connect, because we could send. So there's a book we call the Timeline book, and it's like a timeline of Potawatomis before colonial contact, during and after, and then present day. And that's really helpful, and I think informative for older kids or the foster parents, but that doesn't really help a younger kid. So having those coloring sheets and like a language activity book, I think we try to kind of cover it for all of the ages. Even the teens get a bunny rabbit, but they may not act like they don't like it, but I would think that they do, because it says Potawatomi on there. And we just want to instill that Potawatomi pride into the kids. So I'm very blessed that I grew up knowing my heritage, being very involved in my heritage and ceremonies, but I would say I'm the rare case for most Potawatomis. A lot of us live outside of the area. Like the majority of tribal members, I think it's like 2/3 live outside of Oklahoma, and only 1/3 live inside of Oklahoma. So that is not lost on me. And I just think about, okay, had I grown up not knowing about my culture, like what would I want to know now? And like, wouldn't I want someone to help me do that? So that's, I would say, our program. We have a huge focus on cultural connection. And so I just see those boxes probably developing more over time as well, as we discover what needs the children have.
We do have another question, but first I also wanted to talk about, we have received from child welfare workers across the United States just commending us for sending that box. It's been really great feedback that we've received. I had a worker in California actually reach out to me and said that she's worked with many tribes over the years, and this was the first time that one of the children on her caseload that is Native American received something from their tribe. And so I just thought that was amazing, and we've received handwritten notes from some of our children that has been very special to us. So I'm very happy that we all came up with that idea and are able to connect with our tribal members. The next question, Kendra, is for you. I understand reunification is the main goal, but what if you do want to adopt? Do you have to foster first, or can you just adopt?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way you have to think about it is if you are working with us to become a home for children, you will be a foster parent because all of the children are in foster care. So while the main goal is reunification, like you mentioned, there are cases and situations to where a child needs a placement because reunification is no longer the goal. Rarely does that happen from the time the child is placed into care. When that happens, it means that it was a severe, very severe case of abuse or neglect, and a determination was made to move forward with taking the parents' rights away immediately. Sometimes the children are with family, and sometimes they're with a foster family. So in those situations, obviously the family caring for the child would want to adopt normally. But if the child is placed in a home that's not Native American, and that can happen because we are involved in every case across the nation, like Ashley said, but most of the kids are in custody of the state. So we essentially partner with the state. And, if we don't have a home right away, or commonly a child is placed into care, then we find out they're Potawatomi, especially out of state, then we get involved as soon as we can. And if we have a home that's willing to take that child and adopt them, then that is our goal, is to move them. So recently, there was a child that was born in the early part of the year. Dad was alleged to be Potawatomi. We had to wait 3 or 4 months for paternity because of COVID-19. It had the paternity testing organization was not working at the time. So for that case, the case goal actually is changing to adoption quickly, and the child isn't even barely 8 months old yet. But those happen when the parents are just not involved. So sometimes it's not even just severe abuse. It's just like the parent has, it's like considered abandonment if they just don't come back, essentially. Like Ashley talked about, they have a service plan. So they have to, meet all these requirements to even be considered to get their child placed back with them. And some parents they just have other things going on. So for this case, the child was in a non-native or in a non-Potawatomi home. And so we ended up working with DHS, and we transitioned the child to one of our Potawatomi licensed homes. And so now the rights are still intact for that case at the moment. But like I said, some of the cases there's no parental involvement. We have to move forward. Like, we can't reunify if there's no one to reunify with. So that's a situation where we did place a child for adoption. And so basically, I think like a one-on-one conversation too, like I can share more examples like that. But and that can even happen out of state. I've personally driven many children from Texas and Kansas to bring them over here to bring their case into tribal court. And all of those children now have a case goal of adoption. A couple of them, the goal was reunification. But we just, it's hard to say how many. Another question that somebody may have is how many cases go to adoption. And it's just like, it's like 50-50. I mean, it could be a child's second time in foster care and they could still return home, because what we have to remember is, yes, the child welfare system is a system, but we are subject to the legal system. So it's actually, we may make the day-to-day decisions on placement and services and visitation, but when it comes down to custody, that is up to the court. So like DHS and the tribes, we don't remove children. That is a misconception. We make a recommendation to the court, and the court makes a decision to, and I like to say, place children out of the home. But that's my way to church it up. But essentially, it's the court that removes children, not the state. The state or the tribe provides evidence. But yeah, for sure, if your goal is adoption, we can still work together. You just, like I said, you just have to know that you have to be a foster parent, and you may take placement of a child, like the case I just talked about, where it's like, well, there's no parents involved. Could that change at some point? And basically, until the day you adopt, anything can happen. But I really pride myself, and I think my coworkers do, about being in tune and involved in all of the cases and knowing what variables might pop up. While we can't control everything, I think just our involvement in cases and all of our years of experience combined, we all work together really well so that we can kind of know, if you take place of this child, what does this look like? But I mean, for sure, we need homes to adopt, because we have several cases right now to where the children need adoptive homes, and luckily they're in Potawatomi homes. And so we're really happy that, I don't want to move children. Like if I want to place our kids in our homes from day one, and it's just not always possible because, like I said, sometimes we find out later after removal or phototomy, or maybe, and we need homes all over the state because we have cases everywhere. But like, let's say there is, a child in foster care in Miami, which is very far from Shawnee. It's like 3 to 3.5 hours. Well, we could still place there too. Maybe the child is in DHS custody though. If we don't have a home in Miami, but they have weekly visitation with their parent, it's really difficult to place them in a home in Shawnee. Like, how are they supposed to visit? And children should not have to be in a car for 6 hours a day once a week. But yeah, basically, like if you really are interested in adoption, like this is still a great program for you. It's just understanding the children you're adopting have been through trauma, and most of the time they're in care. It's due to abuse and neglect by their parents. And neglect isn't just physical neglect; it's also exposing them to drugs, exposing them to domestic violence. Like, it's more than, when we think about neglect, we just think about like something missing, but actually it can be a lot more in depth than that. So I hope that kind of answered that question. But yes, we do work with homes that want to adopt, but I will give you all of the realistic expectations and all of that on the phone. But like I said, I only have, I think, 10 foster homes now. As of today, I have 10, and I have one relative home. And so almost all of them have placement. And the two that don't, actually, one is just foster only. They don't want to adopt. And the other one, they had two school-age children just reunify with their mother. So they're taking a little break with their family right now. So we really need homes. That's all I'm going to say. If you'd like to adopt, that's definitely a possibility with our program due to our caseloads and our small number of families.
Kendra, there's another question. Are there classes we need to do with a certain amount of hours before approval to foster?
Yeah, so there is a foster parent training that is called Circle of Keepers that our families attend, and it was developed by all the tribes in the Shawnee, Oklahoma area. Right now, we don't really have an online way to do them, and also meeting in person. I would say all of the tribes we work with really aren't doing in-person meetings. So right now it's just kind of, you can still get approved and do the training after. That's just what we're having to do with families, is they're agreeing that they'll do training after approval. And so the training is good because it does teach you a lot, but also our conversations will help you so much too. Like, I will tell you about grief and trauma and loss, things that you would learn in training, so that you do understand like what, as a foster parent, you're caring for, it's not just a mother that voluntarily placed her child for adoption. These are, parents that, their actions cause this to happen, not their choices. Well, you know what I mean.
I don't see any other questions in the chat.
If anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, or questions on, if you have follow-up about anything I've said, feel free to unmute yourself. But for sure, this is a very complex, deep thing, a foster care agency. But I feel like we are streamlined and make things as easy, as simple as we can. But like I said, I'm more than happy to talk with you, answer. A lot of people have concerns about maybe how their own children might be impacted with the child coming into the home, or want to know about daycare, or if you have questions about like training, then I'm available all of the time. So again, there is our email and our names and email, and then our phone numbers on there as well. And again, please follow our Facebook page if you have not. And I'm going to unshare my screen now. Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, I guess we can go ahead and disconnect. Ashley and I'll stay on, but for a few more minutes, but feel free to go ahead and dismiss yourself. And again, I hope to hear from all of you.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Who is Citizen Potawatomi on the bottom?
That's me, Mary Bell. I just sent you
Oh,
a
hey.
message directly to you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. When I
Oh,
was
you're good.
presenting, I can't see anything. So. All right. So I guess everybody's off then. Good questions. Hopefully they'll apply.
Yeah, I think it went great.
My boy, I have not even had a drink of water today. That's how my day has gone. And I'm like, ugh.
Thanks, Darian.
All right. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
I guess we can log off.